Hello, and welcome to Book Circle Presents The Cavalry Cycle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Tamer of Horses. In Kales, the Dronur commander looked over the high-altitude view. She spoke carefully, as one does to machines with weapons. Use constraining fire. Cover targets in zones A through D. Don't let anyone more reach cover. Her subordinates waited for the drones to ask their questions. The whining of the drones rose, then died away. Turning back, Danny saw that the line of machines was rising into the air. Were they being allowed to pass? Both hearts still pounding, he led the horses forward at a deliberate pace. A cluster of little dust plumes rose 2 meters ahead where the drones had shot the sand. Colors glittered in the sand. Danny stopped. He heard more noises behind him. Distance and the screaming of the rotors hid the actual sound of gunfire. Restraining fire, Fletcher told them over the walkie-talkie. We may be under arrest. The drones had risen to get a wider range of fire, not to let them pass. Confer on channel 1, said Coudre's voice. There was a little click, and Danny felt slightly more alone. They don't want us walking toward the woods, said Charlie Horse on channel 2. Danny was grateful for the company. Not even these little groves, chipped in Carlin. I tried. That must have been the fire he heard behind him. If they're that set against it, said Charlie Horse, it must make good cover. Can't they use infrared or radar or something, said Max's voice. Where were Max and Charlie Horse? IR might not work on a warm day, said Terrell's voice. And tree leaves might baffle radar, said Charlie Horse, at least when it's looking for flesh, maybe. Charlie Horse, exclaimed Carlin, mock chiding. You don't know for sure, off the top of your head? What kind of universal genius are you? Trainee universal genius, Charlie Horse shot back. Maybe these drones are just the cheap models, Terrell proposed. Some of these folk, maybe all of them, Danny reflected, were out here under the flying guns with him. They sounded tense, but they were making sense, even joking. No one was bolting. Neither was he. You could still think out here. So he had a thought. Telling Nuck and Frew, stay, he stepped forward. 6 little plumes of dust, each with a line of colored light in it. Targeting lasers. He glanced up. 6 shiny motes in the air. He told the horses to lie down, the better to stop them following, then took another step forward and raised another cluster of 6 plumes. He was willing to bet that each time the center of the cluster had been exactly 2 meters in front of his forehooves. He wheeled and barked, stay, to the horses as fiercely as he could. They looked worried, but stayed. He wheeled back and started trotting athwart the line of approach, only gradually getting nearer the forest. A line of plumes escorted him exactly 2 meters to his left. Danny, what are you doing? Bellowed Horsepower so loudly he hardly needed the walkie-talkie. Diversion, they're all on me. Get under cover, I'm okay. Under the sound of his own hooves and the bullet rain, he heard Charlie Horse explaining, he's closest. They all shoot at the moving target closest to the woods. No, not at. Shoot before. Before. Diversify targets, the Dronir commander snapped. There are more than 6 targets, the targeting system pointed out. Select 6. Decision procedure, the targeting system asked. Random, ret. That little ret was the signal for the machine to wait for more, quicker than saying arrete or attende. The system wasn't always good at handling conversational pauses. Random from among the previous set of targets. She wasn't sure she needed to say that, but she wasn't sure she did not. Losing targets, the targeting system reported. In fact, there was only one, racing parallel to the edge of the wood. All the others had reached cover. The conversation had only wasted time. Another time, said her aide, let the droneers pick their own targets. The two women traded glares, but there was nothing the commander could say. Rocky Joe Conran could hear the captains arguing from where he and Skylark stood, shoulder deep in brush, watching the Bryce Colt tease the drones. He heard Fletcher directly and all the others over the former's walkie-talkie, cranked up loud enough to get through the gunfire. At least four ideas were being bounced around: surrender and maybe live to fight another day, continue to run away because we knew nothing about the Calesians except that they liked to shoot, send a flying Fae to an uncertain reception as backup for the mermaids on the talk front, and come up with a clever plan to be supplied. No one seemed to have a favorite. So was this too many cooks spoil the broth, or four heads are better than one? Conran thought the former, and also thought the Bryce Colt had already delivered the clever plan. We're all under cover, sir, came the voice of the paint, Carlin. All but Danny. He's still okay. The radio chatter stopped. Everyone was holding breath. When you weigh half a ton and have feet like stones, stealth is a challenge. Whoever was coming up behind Conran was not even trying for it. Without looking away from his field of observation, he could tell they were equine. Eventually, the sound of the breathing told him it was a fellow centaur, not a horse or a rider on a horse. Finally, he felt the warmth of their flank next to his. He was fairly sure who it was. He kept watching. They could talk when and if they chose. He was still surprised when the hand came down on his neck, cold and hard. His reflexes did what they always did in a surprise. He started to rear. As he checked, he heard Fletcher say, Conran, you had better not have shamed that boy into holding his life at naught. If he throws himself away out there, you will find your own shame issues are just the beginning of your woes. You divined our talk? Conran kept his watch, not looking aside. He kept his voice level. I turned around to see how he was doing, if he was dawdling. I saw the two of you and the expressions on your faces. And that was enough for Fletcher to guess the rest, if guess was the word. Witchy old cayuse. I know what you told him, Conran said. You were too soft. You would be amazed how seldom people who are whipping themselves need any help. But I know you think I was too soft on you. I had to burn it out of myself. Had to. No one else can do that for me. Understood. What did you say to him? Horses have good memories. Conran had taken that gift and trained it up. He reported to the captain. All true, Fletcher conceded, but there is the timing and the tone. You can't always protect him. True, he's a soldier. He knows to expect harsh treatment. He knows it's his duty to face it. It doesn't follow that it was your duty to deal it out. Do the devil's work and you can expect his wages. So what's to be my punishment if he dies? I don't know, but I'm sure you'll come up with something good. Fletcher released his neck. How's he doing out there? Good. He makes me think of Hector. Hector? Hector, tamer of horses, that was his epithet. Hector before the walls of Troy, defending his people. Everyone retreated while he stood off Achilles. Hector, a thoroughly decent man, heroic and doomed. God rot your comparison, Conran. Yes, sir. I don't want to play Priam. No, sir. Jenny and Adele swam just under the waves. Here, small objects were hardest to spot except by eye, and they would stay away from eyes. They rounded the point and immediately saw the changes on the bottom, here littered with bits of machinery. A couple of sunken ships showed the harbor of Kales Ra had seen battle not too long ago. Powered, not sail, Adele noted in the sign language merfolk used underwater. Jenny nodded. Lots of fusion power on Hod, I hear, she signed back. Maybe that was. She pointed at something netted, half buried in silt. Fishing, but not for some time. Adele nodded. Wartime conditions, but now no subs, no mines, no sonar pings. Naked as a slug, this harbor. Bet we're inside their perimeter, signed Jenny. Adele nodded. Let's take a look topside. She tilted her head and surfaced enough to get one eye above water. She saw a pier still some distance off. A man stood on it, looking indecisive. No one else was about. She submerged and told Jenny. Receptant, I bet, she added. Jenny nodded. What could you do? She pointed to a hump of pebbly shore, making a gentle incline up to the surface. It wasn't far from the pier. Let's change and come up there, Adele agreed. A few yards out, they unslung their backpacks and extracted their skirts, pleated white knee-length garments of water-repellent fiber. After wriggling their tails into them, they extracted their shore leaf belts, lengths of mother-of-pearl discs. When the clasps closed, their tails shrank away as the pair of fins below their waists grew, thickened, became legs. They extracted their walkie-talkies and derringers, still wrapped, and tucked them into their waistbands, thoughtfully broad for just such uses. Then, flutter kicking to a suitable depth, they stood, drained their gills, and walked out of the sea. The man on the pier was already staring at them. Adele reached out to catch as Jenny wobbled. Jenny had acquired her shore leaf belt only recently, and it had been a long time since she had walked on legs. You'll be all right? Adele asked. Good enough. A little staggering will allay suspicions. Maybe I'll make puppy eyes at him too. Adele snorted. Without puppy eyes, Jenny walked with slow care toward the man who was still staring, waiting. He looked fully human, mortal, and wore a dark blue uniform. We're from a nation called Grand Normandy, Jenny told him in French. Our ship is around the headland from here, she pointed. We're explorers and just came ashore to water and graze our horses. We only learned your city was here within the hour. We are not enemies. We only want to leave peacefully. Can you help us tell the city rulers? So that was it, he said to himself. To Jenny, he said, Please come with me. He's taunting us, the Dronir commander protested. The aide shrugged. He found a weakness and he's using it. Anger flared in the commander. Target him, she told the nearest Dronir, the one on Yellow Station. Then Ret, she said, in case the system got ideas. You didn't kill people for annoying you, or you shouldn't. They hadn't told her to kill yet. Just take out his horse. 0 seconds. Something was going to happen. 0.01 seconds. The panic started to push from background to foreground in his mind. 0.02 seconds. Humiliation, loyalty, and fear warred in his soul at the speed of spirit. 0.03 seconds. The war over, Danny's hands started flying over his shoulder to his back, executing the plan that was somehow already there for them. 0.52 seconds. Danny's eye locked on the glint of metal in the sky. He created its fate, or realized he already had. 1.2 seconds. The bow ended its arc over his shoulder, in position in his left hand. His right hand was already at his ear, holding the string back. 1.31 seconds. The arrow was away. 2.17 seconds. A spot, a spark of light, prickly, scratchy yellow light, flickered and danced over the ground. It flew along his forelegs, up and down his human chest, wavered, then settled into a hummingbird dance on his horse ribs. He stared, and the angles of the shadows told him now what he had needed to know, and so he knew it earlier that second. Since the arrow was gone, he had leisure to wonder why yellow? Weren't targeting lasers usually red? He saw a tiny flicker of Charlie Horse, his face lit by a campfire, opening his mouth to explain why. But not yet. Baudronnier at Yellow Station stared at the screen. The word confirmé shone on it, but he paid no attention. He lived in, had grown up in, a city based on magic, but there was still the element of surprise, of wonder. Here was his first close-up view of the target. Surely that was really a rider? Surely the horse's head was obscured somehow? No, it really was 4.04 seconds. The picture whirled. The message changed to perte d'altitude. 6.38 seconds. Signal perdu, read the otherwise blank screen. No one saw exactly what happened to the first drone. Not even Danny or the droneer could be said to have seen it. But the surviving five drones were curious. They had their own AI, some of it aboard, some back in the city, and did their own scouting under the direction of the droneers. They no longer did their own firing. There had been too many incidents of friendly fire. The remaining five knew of the loss of the first and saw movement on the ground. Danny saw more sparks flicker in the grass: green, orange, aqua, indigo, scarlet. Color coded, he muttered. He saw the angles. He saw the glints in the sky. The bow was already in his hands and his mind was settled, so the next five shots were much faster. The first was away before he even finished saying color. What did he just do? Fletcher asked in a numb voice. He shot the enemy drone fleet out of the sky. Conran's own voice was flat. The professional duty done, he allowed a note of awe to creep in. Like that, he lightly snapped his fingers. He can shoot across time, said Fletcher, his voice now dreamy, a murmur. He's a mage of the bow. What did you say? Conran asked. Hmm? What did I say? Oh, never mind. I'm just a poor mythical beast. I won't meddle in the affairs of mages. I'm no. Never mind. What did you say? Seer, then. I said he shot the enemy drone fleet out of the sky. They weren't our enemies before. They were about to be. They had more than six drones. Jenny and Adele stood in a conference room, sneaking glances out at the launch field. Rank upon rank of drones stood there. One block was flashing running lights and revving motors. In the hillside behind the field was a wide rectangular slot of a doorway, leading, no doubt, to yet more drones in hangars and to drone factories. They stood among Chalesians, most of them in dark blue uniforms, before a wall screen. Before we decide, said the one with the most colored buttons on his uniform, we want you to explain this. The screen had been showing the field on the far side of the ridge, viewed from the ridge itself, and now quite empty. They had told the mermaids about the removal of the six drones. Now they showed it to them from the ridge camera and from the various drones themselves. Jenny compared the timestamps on the images with the clock readout in the screen corner. This was less than an hour old. She saw the drones chivvy her shipmates with their fire. She saw Danny draw their fire while everyone else dived into copse and brush. She saw the view from drone yellow, saw it tumble and go black. That went by very fast, remarked the top brass Chalesian. Here is a still, in close-up. He touched a control. It is the last thing the drone saw. It was Danny. He was rearing, viewed from above. He held that heavy-duty black mechanized bow and clearly had just shot it. In this image, it was not his equine body that made him look inhuman. It was his eyes. Above the sweep of red beard, they stared out of a pale face, not angry, not frightened, just focused and intent, like those of an owl or hawk. These clips, windows opened on the screen showing slow motion recordings from other drones, indicate that, as the close up suggests, he shot it down. The slow mo clips showed a flitting black dash, the arrow going into a rotor on drone yellow, then the drone starting to tumble. Shot them all down. That's my friend Danny, Jenny said. He's not a monster or a secret weapon. He was only defending himself. He was being targeted. She pointed at Danny's image where a grainy yellow squiggle was visible on a foreleg, the targeting beam. I'm sorry, blurted a woman in blue uniform. I hadn't seen a close up. We were just going to take out his horse. We had not raised to lethal. We didn't know that he was his horse, concluded Adele. She traded looks with Jenny, in which they decided not to tell the Chalesians how the dedicated cavalry, and through them increasingly the whole Grand Norman military and the nation, felt about horses. Danny, said Top Brass, waiting to hear more. Danny Bryce, age 17. He's a sweet kid, and a young stallion, too, of course. He makes friends easily. He likes to dance. And She paused, trying hard not to smile. And he's a very good shot. The armament system says a bow like that aimed vertically could have a range of no more than a fifth of the altitude of the drone, the top brass said, sounding aggrieved. Not to mention the aiming, that's magic. Jenny shrugged, as did Adele. Well, yes, his name is Trickshot. I think he's found his métier. She did not entirely succeed in suppressing the smile this time. She sobered. Did you want more explanation? Top Brass shook his head. I just wanted to know what happened, if what appeared to happen did happen, and if it could happen again, Jenny thought. One of the civilians stared at Danny's image. It's like looking down the zodiac end on, she murmured. The business end, Jenny thought. Danny Bryce is a very English name, the civilian woman went on. I would have expected something more Hellenic or Latin, classical. She paused. Apparently, Calesians liked to give you silences to fill. He grew up in England, Jenny said. Until last year, he was a normal boy, fully human. Then he enlisted and was changed. He is a transformation, like me. This was nothing they couldn't learn if they spared an agent to send to Grand Norman Station Hod Ammon, or to walk the streets of Upham, Saint-Eloi-sur-Mer, or Stoke Norrie. The Calesians knew. They knew about merfolk and about her, since her bare midriff showed the gill slits just above her hips. I'm sorry, she said insincerely, about the loss of equipment. It was in self-defense, as I said, and in defense of his shipmates, his countrymen. She glanced out the window again at the waiting drone fleet. Clearly, you could obliterate us, forest or no forest, with that fleet. I'm willing to give my oath, which you may verify with any scrying you like, that we came here by accident, with no idea you were here, or even that you existed. We are only exploring, not making any claims, not looking for any fights. We just want to go. At most, we might want to graze the horses and top off our fresh water. It might be good to sound a little needy. I will take the same oath, said Adele, and we can arrange meetings with our captains if you like, who will swear likewise. The brass, top and middle, looked at the civilians, who looked back. The one who had invoked the zodiac sighed. What's to be gained by shooting or capturing passing strangers? We'd only make enemies and stain our souls. We're out 6 drones. Consider it a live fire exercise and an instructive one. Let us hear your oaths spoken before a verifier, and then I expect part company, though we would appreciate it if you told us something about yourselves before that. The captains, 2 and 4-legged, sat in a semicircle around a driftwood fire. They were well up the northern shore on a thin strip of beach with the forest near their backs. Before them, the Bethos floated, dark against a late dusk. Over it hung the city-cradling crescent of Hod's moon. Okay, we try again, came the chief engineer's voice over the walkie-talkies. Gremlin, if you've been holding back on the luck, think I want to stick around here? Go. There was a throaty noise, and the Bethos lit up, running lights and portholes shining. Everybody cheered, the captains and the larger audience massed behind them. Under the noise, Danny could hear Crotal the Gremlin saying, "High five," and then, "Still got a lot to do," answered by a human grunt. For the folk ashore, a lot to do included setting up a sketchy camp, rummaging suppers, setting watches, and more, each with hundreds of subordinate details. But Danny stayed where he was, standing respectfully behind Fletcher and Elaine. He'd been told to stay, along with the other principals in our recent adventure, as Elaine had put it. Now, said Coudray, we have a little breathing space. She placed her walkie-talkie on the sand and set it recording. Debrief, please, you two first. This was addressed to Jenny and Adele, lying on the beach in their own forms between fire and water. They recounted their visit to Kale's Ra. We'll write up what we told them about Grand Normandy, ma'am, Jenny said. I don't think we know anything classified, but in any case, we tried not to tell them anything they couldn't learn in a tavern in Hod Ammon. Their verifier was interesting. We tested in front of a little metal arch with a bell in it, standing in a pool of what looked like blue mercury. Alchemical truth detecting. It never rang, which I gather was good. She glanced upward, where an observation float hung, flashing running lights to make everything above board. Nobody's hiding from anyone. Think they're listening in, ma'am? Parabolic mics or mini drones or something? We'll assume so, said Coudray. Now, for what we will call the land engagement. Here's what I know. And she gave her account, watching drones fly and people flee and being able to do damn all about it. They also serve who only stand and wait, she concluded, quoting Milton, or fume and fret. Gentlemen of the Cavalries? Dean, Elaine, and Fletcher told their stories in turn. After Danny shot down the drones, everyone had rushed from their copses and spinneys into the main body of the forest where they had worked their way northward as fast as possible. Meanwhile, on the Bethos, Luanen had rallied her energies and summoned what wind she could to push the ship north after the troops. She gets a medal as soon as we make Hod Ammon, Coudray declared, and the audience agreed. She'd have sprained something if that was the sort of thing that sprained. The retreat north had stopped only when Jenny and Adele had checked in by walkie-talkie. Coudray and the other captains had spoken with the Kales officials by radio and, over the radio, given their oaths as to the non-aggressive intentions. That seemed to be enough. The observation float had popped up within the hour and repairs had resumed. Kales would soon realize that the Bethos was damaged, not just restocking, but by now no one cared. Conran, the renowned scout, gave his report, including the fullest description so far of Danny's exercise in drone baiting. He communicated the concept reckless courage without using those words. Danny found that standing away from the fire did not put him in enough darkness to keep all the captains from staring at him. Mr. Bryce, said Coudray, your account, please. With a certain amount of stammering and ers and ums, Danny produced a factual and objective account of his actions. Marvelous, said Coudray, briefly unmilitary in tone. I will be putting in for a medal at Hod Ammon too, ma'am, Fletcher said, and again the audience agreed. I think I was really pretty safe, ma'am, Danny demurred. They were always 2 meters away, very steady. You can't have felt safe, Coudray answered, and we know from Lieutenant Navino's report that you were not safe just before the moment you. She paused, looked up at the observation float, smiled, and hoped they were listening. You shot the drone fleet out of the sky, she finished with relish. I didn't know they were aiming at me, ma'am. I just got this feeling that something was up. Right after, while I was running for the woods, I figured they'd got tired of my teasing and would have just started shooting everyone. But I couldn't decide why I thought that. I don't think I did think that at the moment. He shifted on his hooves uneasily. It sounds like I got them mad. And no wonder. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. When you shot down all the drones, she smiled again, you gave us time. Time for everyone to get into the forest, and even more important, time while the Calesians picked up their hanging jaws and paused to talk with the lieutenants. And yes, I know you didn't know that's what you were doing. I gather you didn't really know why it was time to shoot. But you did. And you were right. It was time to shoot. And before that spectacular bit, you had already given your brothers and sisters the chance to get under cover. Not with magic, just wits and guts. Well done. Danny came to attention, saluted, and muttered his thank yous. Well, I have a working ship to get back to. Good night, gentlemen. Coudray walked down to the beach, got in the inflatable with 3 of her people, and was hauled out by the mermaids. The cavalry captains rose and conferred. When Fletcher turned to his trainees, he found Danny staring at Charlie Horse with an odd smile. Charlie Horse was saying, the color coding is to help the drone pilots sort out who is aiming at which. The drones can do that just by keeping track, and I bet there were IDs and time stamps and stuff coded into those beams too. But Hod cultures, they like their tech, so they deploy it all over the place. Then they find they can't trust it and have to rein it back in. Maybe they could have let those drones battle on their own, but that probably hasn't worked well. So they put human judgment back in the loop. I wonder if that worked for me or against me, said Danny. Charlie Horse shrugged. Maybe it slowed them down a little, but you don't need to worry about speed. They get faster, you just anticipate sooner. It was human decision that said, and I quote, take out his horse, for which the horse kicked their asses. Go trick shot. Go trick shot, Fletcher echoed. The trainees, hearing him, wheeled and saluted. Gentlemen, we have a camp to set up. He gave orders for a while. None sent Danny away, and soon he was left with Fletcher and Conran. From the way Conran stood, Danny thought he had been ordered to stay. Mr. Bryce, said Fletcher, now I would like your report. What do you want me to add, sir? The inside story. What were you thinking and feeling while you played with those drones? Fletcher glanced about, making sure no one else listened. How did you not bolt? What did it feel like? Danny stared for a while at the driftwood fire, then finally answered, It's like a bad ride, sir, riding a spooked horse. I loved riding. It's the one thing I miss. I've never regretted changing for a second. I don't mind about being too big for indoors or having to eat lots of mulch or any of that. I do miss riding, sir, but not riding like this, like riding something big and scary strong, only in me, like you said, sir. But you made it work for you? Yes, sir. It needed a short rein, like when you have to keep telling the horse to keep on the job, right here, right now, thinking about nothing else. I, it kept me working because if I didn't keep working, it would cut loose. Conran nodded and said, I take back my hard words. No, said Fletcher. Give or take opinions about what's too soft, you were right. We both were. Very well, sir. Then I apologize for the tone and the personal remarks. He held out his hand and Danny shook it, grinning. Fortunate child. Not a child, Fletcher corrected. Conran nodded again. But fortunate, he insisted. Fortunate to get schooled in handling a weakness within an hour of discovering it. First Fletcher jaws at you, then I do, then you get your real lesson from our friends the Calesians. He waved upward at the float. Fletcher gazed at Danny for a bit, then said, Just to make sure, I hope you're not going to fall off the other side of the donkey and go looking for situations like this for the thrills. Oh, no, sir, I'd rather do my own galloping now. Good. Go trick shot. Right now, go help Horsepower. He's having trouble with the picket, looks like. Nuck has used up all his good temper for the day. And you are our best tamer of horses. The end. Thank you very much.